Everybody. This is Joanne Stevens. It's Thursday, March 16th, day before St. Patrick's Day, and this is our weekly call-in show for mobile home park owners. And today our topic, which was our topic last week too, and this month is going to be devoted to partnerships. We have a special guest today that I'm going to be interviewing in a few minutes, and that is Ken Rischel of Rischel Consulting Group. I'll introduce Ken here in just a moment. Wanted to make a few announcements first. When we're doing the interview, there will be a time to ask questions, or if you are limited in time, it's fine to just push *6 to be unmuted and to ask your question. And we really encourage people to call in with questions, or you can also email the questions to joannestevens@iowarealty.com. The March newsletter is on the website, joannemstevens.com. If you would like us to ever email or mail the newsletter to you, we'll be happy to do that. Just let us have your contact information. Also wanted to announce that the Manufactured Housing Institute, which is the trade association for manufactured housing, mobile homes, is having their annual Congress in Las Vegas, May 2nd through 4th. You can go to my website, Joanne M. Stevens, to click on information about registering. They do always have an education forum, it's a one-day forum on May 2nd. It's very, very informative and always worth the hike out to Las Vegas to attend their educational forum. So May 2nd to 4th at, I believe it's at Caesars this year in Las Vegas. Or you can just Google Manufactured Housing Institute for details also. I wanted to remind everybody too, in Cedar Rapids on December 10th and 11th, we're going to have a mobile home park owner symposium, and we'll be addressing more topics about partnerships, capital gains taxes, investing, saving and investing for retirement, and exit strategies for park owners. So that's December 10th and 11th here in Cedar Rapids. Also wanted to remind people to keep in mind the George Allen Roundtable is every September. It's usually mid-September. We don't have the exact dates yet, but it'll be mid-September, and that is a not-to-be-missed event also. When we have the dates and the location, we'll put that up on the website too, and it will be in the newsletter. So I will now introduce our guest speaker, Ken Rischel. And Ken has been a good friend of mine for many years, and Ken has been in the industry for a few decades now. He owns a company called Rischel Consulting Group, which he has quite a few consultants that specialize in all kinds of issues and problem solving that have to do with selling mobile homes. Ken, I would say, in my opinion, single-handedly convinced mobile home park owners that they had to follow the federal law regarding the Dodd-Frank Act, which went into effect in 2000, the law was passed in 2008. The states started telling their members that there was this new law and that we needed to follow the law. Many mobile home park owners poo-pooed following the law. They were used to selling mobile homes on contract or on, being more or less being the bank, where people made their mobile home sale contract payments with their lot rent and so forth. And I would say through Ken's influence and his writings and speaking, he put a tremendous amount of effort into explaining to park owners, executive directors, that we did indeed need to follow this new law. Today, it's pretty rare that a park owner doesn't understand that they're no longer allowed to sell homes on contract unless they go through special licensing, which, you know, Ken is the national expert on that. So he's been extremely generous with his time of going to state associations to speak on this topic and writing about it. You know, it's a very serious topic, and the penalties for not being in compliance with it are quite severe. So I think Ken has also saved people from having to, you know, deal with any federal charges on not being in compliance. So Ken, are you on the line?
I am now.
Okay. Well, Ken, can you tell us a little bit about Risho Consulting and what you do, so our listeners can understand it a little better, and then also maybe talk about what are some of the one or two key topics that you're seeing through your consulting business that the rest of park owners need to be aware of?
Sure. Let me start, which I know you know, Joanne. You know, I am also a community owner. At one time was a pretty good sized community owner, as well as a retailer. So, you know, our approach to all of this is, you know, what makes sense for people that are community owners and retailers, and what can they do and not do. As far as our company is concerned, we are, as you indicated, national in scope. And we have I don't know, quite a few people now working all over the country for us, and as well as out of Illinois, and traveling to people. But our main focus has been on helping people set up legal, compliant, and profitable and sustainable finance organizations to finance the homes they sell. That's what we started out doing in 2006 with friends of mine, that some of whom already had companies, but their companies had problems, and we were going in and helping them fix those problems, whatever it might be. Administrative costs in some cases were quite high, and we showed them how to lower those things. We showed them where to go to borrow money to make these loans with, that kind of thing. And then with the advent of the SAFE Act, everything started to change. And all of a sudden, everybody had to have different licenses than they'd been operating on before. And in some states where no licenses were necessary originally, suddenly they had to have some kind of a lending license. And as I said, in some states, we went from pretty simple lending licenses to very complex lending licenses, and the whole process got to be more. And then with the passage of Dodd-Frank, that added to the burden substantially, because of the advent of a lot of new rules and regulations, but also with the creation of an agency to regulate all this stuff from a federal basis as opposed to a state basis. So it got even more complicated. And along the way, what we found is that a lot of community owners, even those that were not financing, were actually not complying with a number of federal laws that they really needed to be in compliance with. So we set up, once George Allen talked me into going beyond just people that were friends of mine, which he did in 2009, we got to see a broader audience, and we got to see a lot of community owners, especially smaller ones, that weren't even aware that they had a compliance management burden for a number of federal laws, even if they didn't lend. And so we started helping people with that too, even the ones that weren't going to lend, set up their compliance management systems so they could stay out of trouble on that. And then some of the states, because of what the feds were doing, got more aggressive on compliance management too, and we included all of that in there. And then when FinCEN did a rule extension requiring anybody that sold a manufactured home as a dealer to also comply with the anti-money laundering laws, that became an even bigger issue, and we help with that. That's kind of the way that we have done this. I really didn't anticipate this company being anywhere near as large as it is, nor did I think I wanted it to be, because I actually started that company in 2006 because I was planning to go into semi-retirement, and it hasn't stayed that way. And the newest issue, we have two types of people that we deal with, some of which have lending operations of some size, and they pay us annual retainers just like you would pay a law firm for our ongoing help. We have, and that's the smaller number, but total we've got about almost 7,000 customers now that use us occasionally for things that they need. But the retainer clients, a couple of them got in some serious trouble over fair housing. And it had nothing to do with their lending operations, it had to do with their community operations. And after about 4 of them came to me and said, look, you do so well on this other stuff and you've got all the contacts, surely you can help us put our fair housing programs together in a way where we're not going to get nailed because we did this or we paid for that and it wasn't enough. And so we agreed to do it. And then when one of our retainer clients last year got hit with a $250,000 lawsuit, we knew it was serious. So actually, the end of March, we've got a program where right now we've got it all set up, but we're only working with retainer clients trying to get them all done. But the end of March, we're going to announce that we're also going to help community owners with their fair housing problems as well.
Oh, that's a great idea. I don't think there's anybody doing that, and there's such a need for that. And I think there's some, I think park owners are being charged with being able to demonstrate that they have a fair housing policy to begin with, and also aren't they? We're supposed to be doing continual training with staff.
Well, they're supposed to, just like they would have to do for some of these other laws, whether it's anti-money laundering or it's safeguards or it's red flag or it's Patriot Act or OFAC, all these laws that they're already supposed to be doing something about as non-lenders, because lenders have like 22 different federal laws they have to have a compliance management system for. But yeah, fair housing is one of them. SACRA is another one that community owners have to, and you do have to have written policies and procedures. You have to have training programs for your employees. You have to have training programs for senior management. And you've got to audit this stuff every year to make sure it's working. And if you don't have those things, a lot of regulators will, look at it and say, well, we don't care what you think. You don't really care, and you're not doing what you need to be doing. So,
and what do you think? I think for most, most park owners, know about federal fair housing and know what the protected classes are, and we don't hear about too many problems, but maybe there are problems that we just don't hear about, like this case that you were talking about, where the owner was fined $250,000. But it seems like, shouldn't the state associations be addressing federal fair housing more than they are?
I would say yes, but I need to qualify that. I mean, you have been the chairman of the Iowa Association, and I have been the chairman of the Illinois Association, and so we both know something that sometimes even our members don't know, which is as associations, there's a limited amount of money that they can spend to actually know what they need to know to be doing all of this stuff. And the second thing is they have a liability there that a lot of associations are just choosing not to take. You know, a good example was the Texas Association a few years ago. You could get all the documents you needed from their website regarding lending. You know, if you want to try to set up your own lending operation, they have pulled all of that down. And and in fact, if you're a member of the Texas Association and you go on their website, you're looking for something that has to do with seller finance, what they do is they tell you to call me or call our company.
I see.
But because of the liability, because one of the state associations a few years back got nailed. They had given information to a board member, and the board member had not followed that information correctly. But his defense was that he had done what the New York Association had told him to do, and they ended up with a serious cost factor that they had to expend to get out from under what he'd done when he hadn't followed those instructions correctly. If that makes sense. What I really think is that what MHI is doing, I think the state association should be copied. MHI is talking about fair housing. They're telling people how important it is and what it means to them. And as you know, Rick Robinson is sending stuff out monthly to people that ask for it, you know, about why they need to be careful with fair housing. But MHI has taken the position they're not going to help anybody solve any problems. They're just going to put out a little information. And I think that's what the state association should be doing as well. You know, is making sure that people know that that's an issue if they're not doing that. But whether they want to get in the business of telling people how to avoid those lawsuits. And by the way, I need to correct you. That was a lawsuit, not a regulator. A regulator was involved in it, but it was a private lawsuit for $250,000. And and to touch on that for just a second, that's part of the problem. It's part of the problem not just for fair housing. It's part of the problem on the seller finance too. Is that when people get hit with fines, they don't want anybody to know it.
Right.
Or they get sued. They don't want anybody to know it. You know, every time we get involved in these situations, one of the first things we have to do is to sign a non-disclosure agreement.
Mm-hmm. Is that right? I think that's very true, Ken. I think it would benefit everybody if when something like this happened, what you're talking about, this private lawsuit that was, you know, quite severe for the $250,000, that I think there's not too many park owners or any industry member who wouldn't pay attention and think, oh, I need to learn about this, or I need to pay attention to what's going on here. And I discovered that myself years ago. I had I guess it would be a fair housing, and what happened was it was a lawsuit that went nowhere. But I had leased a site in a park to a young woman whose parents lived in the park and her grandfather lived in the park. In fact, the grandfather bought her the home. Well, you know, she was a young girl, single mom with a baby, and a guy moved in with her, and of course, landlord last to know. And what happened was that the boyfriend, we realized that there was a problem because one Halloween, he did one of those Ku Klux Klan burnings in the front yard at this mobile home park. So that was quite wonderful. And, you know, everybody in the town was horrified, and it was a small town, so everybody in town knew about it. It was in the paper. So we immediately moved to evict this tenant who wasn't even on the lease. And he immediately got an attorney and filed federal fair housing, stating that we were discriminating against a religion. Can you guess what the religion was that we were discriminating against?
No, but it doesn't matter because that's
Well,
actually complex. And here's the scary part. There's a chance he could have won that lawsuit.
well, he may have. It didn't really go anywhere. But what I learned, the religion was the Ku Klux Klan, which was bogus. But he was. But what the reason I bring that up is because when I went through, it cost several $1,000s to get rid of this case. But I found, when I wasn't very happy about the situation, talking to other park owners, I found out that almost all of them had something like this, where it wasn't really a case that it went nowhere. But I thought, wouldn't it be good if we would talk about these things at our meetings or when we're together, so that people can be aware of what might happen to them and be prepared. Anyway, but let's get back to what you were talking about. And before, Ken, I want you to mention your website address where people can sign up for your newsletter. Is that something that our listeners would be able to do?
If they want it. It's just Rischel, my last name, RISHEL.net.
Okay.
So if they go to Rischel.net, they'll find our website and they'll see some of it. We don't have any fair housing stuff up there yet because we're not going to publicly release that till the end of this month. But they'll be able to see all the other stuff we do. They'll be able to find the page about the newsletter and subscribe to the newsletter if they want to. And it's free. The only thing we ask for is that we need to know who these people are. They need to they need to give us their name and their regular physical mailing address and phone numbers, and put a statement in there. I would like to subscribe to this newsletter, because the system we use for delivering newsletters, we have to be careful that nobody accuses us of spam. So we do ask that they make a statement if they want the newsletter. If they don't want it, all they got to do is email us back and say, stop sending it to me, and that's fine. It is free. So but they're welcome to it. But the other thing that I would say in regards to these fines and lawsuits, there's two things I would say to that, and then we can, if you want to get on to some other questions, we can. The first thing is it's been my experience that it doesn't matter whether a lawsuit has any legs or doesn't. Right. If you're, as a community owner, you get sued, the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to flush $5,000 down the toilet to an attorney.
Yes, I can totally relate to that.
And whether it's got legs or it doesn't have legs, because on the other side, it's not like a commercial lawsuit where the other side has assets where you could demand in court that if it was a frivolous lawsuit that you be made whole. These people don't have the money to make you whole, so you're going to lose that money no matter what. The other thing in regard to that is that's gotten more serious in the last couple of years in regards to fair housing is there's all kinds of little groups around that will fund these lawsuits for these individuals. If these individuals might not have $10 to their name, but they can go find a free lawyer that'll sue you. Yes,
and that is has been an ongoing potential landmine that a park owner could fall into for when they least expect to.
And like the lawsuit that you had, that you described. Now, I didn't hear every detail of it, but we actually cover stuff like that in the training that we do and in the policy and procedure manuals, just specifically like that lawsuit you talked about. What do you do if you have somebody in a protected class that comes to your community and says, gee, I would like to live here and I want to run a space and da-da-da-da and buy a house from you. And then you have somebody else in the community that doesn't like that particular protected class, so they run outside and maybe hang a Confederate flag on their home.
Sure.
And then that protected class person comes back to you before they finish the whole process and saying, hey, you're not supposed to discriminate against me. And there's a flag hanging out there that says that you've got people in your community that don't want me to live here.
Yeah.
You know, so now
It's
what
a real
do you
problem, isn't it? Yeah.
Well,
And
there are solutions. There are solutions to all of it, but you have to be prepared in advance for it. You can't deal with it.
That's right. And so is that, so the training, are you going to offer courses in that, or how do people get your training if they'd like that?
Well, we take this very seriously. So when a company comes to us and says we want something done, the first thing we do is an evaluation of what they're capable of doing on their own.
Okay.
And, you know, with our guidance and our direction. And if they can move in that way, then they will do most of the work with guidance from us. Okay. And of course, that's way less expensive a solution. But in some cases, we may say, or they may say, they may just come out and tell us, like some have, we just want you to do everything. Okay. Now, assuming we're doing everything, then in that case, the first thing we do is we get the policy and procedure manuals done for them. We set up employee training manuals to be distributed to the employees. And then we use a go-to-meeting type method. It's a little more advanced than a webinar. We use it's kind of like a webinar where they come in on their computer. They can see stuff up on the screens, and they can be given questions to try to answer, you know, from what they think they know, and then the correct answers are given to them. They can also get on, you know, they can get right into the webinar and either type in a message or ask to be unmuted. They have to be unmuted by us to ask a question. And we'll try to answer it, but we do that through a series of those. And we do it unfortunately, with fair housing, this isn't something we can only do, you know, 1 hour and you're done. It might be 1 hour we've done today, but we may need to do a follow-up and cover even more material in a week or 2 weeks or a month, and we will stay on it until these people that are coming to these webinars are fully trained. Now, we're going to be doing them every day because we're going to limit the group to 20 people that can come on. So we're literally going to be doing them every day. We may be doing, we've got one gal that looks like she may be doing 3 a day or 4 a day, you know, every single day just for training. Yeah. But it doesn't mean that you would come to 4 in the same day. It means you come to one day, and then you get part 2 and part 3 and so forth as you need. Now, the people that are going to do most of it themselves, we supply them with all the training materials and let them train their own employees.
Okay.
But the important piece is we have learned, as we've been working on this for the last 7 or 8 months now, is that this is so complex that it's absolutely critical that people really understand specifically what they can and can't say, because one word could make a difference. Right. So we've got a very programmed system to teach this with so that people can stay out from under trouble. And if they have a compliance manager, which they should have, that's, you know, maybe is already trained in some other aspects, we have a separate training program for the compliance manager so they can oversee what the rest of the employees are doing. Now, if you're a small community where it's mom and dad and 2 kids, it's, you know, in some respects it's easier, but you know, as opposed to some of these larger communities where we've got, you know, they've got 290 employees that we have to train on that. So Ken,
let's it's a very serious topic, but before we run out of time, I would like to, I know you've seen a wide range of partnerships and been involved in all kinds of businesses or business partnerships yourselves. What are, can you tell us maybe 2 or 3 key things that make for a successful partnership?
Well, yeah, I would be happy to. I love partnerships. I use partnerships to raise money rather than necessarily going to a lender when I want to do something. To me, the key thing, and I assume we're going to stay specific here now to manufactured housing communities. Okay.
Yes.
I grew up on the farm. I know how to run a tractor. I know how to run all that stuff. I could even pound nails and do all of those things, but I don't like to do them, and I'm not really good at them. Okay. But probably the bigger issue is I don't even like doing it. That's not my thing.
Sure.
But in the past, when I have partnered up on communities in a single entity community, I'm not talking about some of the syndication stuff we used to do back in the 70s and the 80s, but I would try to partner up with somebody that was good at all that blue collar work, that liked all that blue collar work, and they wanted to partner with me because I'm really good at, or at least it looks that way from the results. I'm really good at the marketing side and the advertising side and the planning side and raising money and all of those things. So I tried to partner up with people whose skill sets were different than mine.
Sure.
Okay. And so I would have, somebody that was really good at doing the infrastructure, and dealing with the plumbing and the sanitaries and all that sort of thing. Doesn't mean I didn't understand it. It just means that wasn't my job.
Sure.
And my job usually wasn't, because our communities were, for the most part, although I've got a little one right now, 52 cycling, but our communities were mostly larger. I always tried to figure out if I could get one of those partners, if I could get 3 partners, one of them that could handle all of the infrastructure and the backhoes and all of it in the streets and all that sort of stuff, and maybe even get another partner who managed the community from the financial standpoint of making sure the rents got collected and that people were happy and the clubhouse got rented and all of those different things correctly. If I could have 3 partners in there, that was fantastic for me. Now, not always were we equal partners. Okay. And in fact, in most cases we weren't, but I found having people as partners, they worked harder, they worked smarter, and they cared more, and they got a better payoff than I could give them if they were an employee. So I like partnership, but partnerships can go very wrong if you don't like each other or you resent each other.
Right. And so that's where the fireworks start is, people, you probably have seen, or maybe you can comment on a partnership that started out where everybody was copacetic, everything was great, until that inevitable day when people didn't necessarily agree on how to do something, or what should be, whether it was a rent increase or resurfacing the streets or selling the property or refinancing the property, buying a home, from a tenant that was, just all those things that can come up. Have you seen a common theme in the things that can make a partnership go awry?
Yeah, I can think of 2 examples right now, neither of which are retainer clients, so I can probably share a little bit more information.
Yeah, please.
I can think of one in Frankfort, Illinois right now that belonged to the same family for many years, and it's a 5-star community. It's a beautiful community,
right?
Right south of Frankfort, Illinois. There was a death, and the death was what was holding that partnership working well. Now, the irony is that everybody that's involved in it right now are actually not only partners, they're relatives and close relatives. And they are literally tearing this beautiful community apart because they can't agree on anything. And I think eventually that community will be sold, but it'll be sold as 2 halves. But and one half has got the clubhouse, and the other half has got because they're on private water and sewer, the other one's got the private water and sewer system. And how the hell is that supposed to work? And why would you take a community that large and tear it through because people can't agree on selling prices, or they can't agree on how they're going to structure financing or anything else?
You know, Ken, that reminds me of a park owner who told me one time he owned a very large park, and it wasn't a 5-star park, but it was a nice park, and there were 3 partners, and so the CPA, who probably had never even been in any mobile home park, let alone this mobile home park, told them, well, it was very simple. What they could do was just hire a surveyor and just plat out, subdivide the park into 3 parcels, and they each take a parcel, and there you go, problem solved. But it was the same situation as what you're speaking. There was one clubhouse, and the sewer and the water, and not every there was somewhat of a vacancy issue. So how do you work through that? Does one partner end up with 30% vacant, and one partner has 100% occupancy, and so it's so I see what you're saying. Well, that is a dilemma,
but
and
it's personalities that they cannot. And I'll give you a couple more like that
please.
too, including one of mine many years ago. Okay. There's another.
Ken, we have about 2 minutes, so pick the one that you think is the most that will resonate the most with our listeners.
Well, okay, the first park that I built down in Florida was in partnership with somebody that knew a hell of a lot more about parks than I did. Okay, and as we went along, he kept trying to tell me we need to make these changes, and I had a vision of where I wanted to be, and I didn't want to do that. So we ended up doing the one park, and when it came time to do the second one, we didn't partner. Now, I should tell you that I was probably stupid, because the partner was, who I'm sure you know, was Maury Wilder. And, I've done pretty well, and I've been pretty fortunate, but not nearly as fortunate as Maury Wilder was before he died. Maury's estate was worth somewhere north of $2 billion, and I'm nowhere close to that, so I probably should have stayed partnered with him.
Yeah, I'm not anywhere close to that either.
And that was after he gave his ex-wife $360 million in the divorce settlement.
Oh.
So there's a case of where I made a mistake because I should have listened more to him.
Well, we learn from experience, and that's why I wanted to have you on the show today. And I would, hope that we could interview you again in an upcoming call-in show, Ken, because I think this has been tremendously vital to what park owners need to know, whether it's fair housing, selling the homes, partnerships, and looking for people, looking at people's strengths and who to partner with, and that the partnership, the amount of the interest, the percentage of the interest, do not have to be identical. I think those are very, very good food for thought.
Yeah, and the biggest thing is you have to figure out what the two or three of you, or however many there are, can get along.
Yes.
And
yes.
And the secret to that is having each person have their own area of expertise, and always defer to the other person when they have a different level of expertise in a different area.
Right.
I never have ever second guessed any of my partners on the size of the sanitary pipes, or how deep they needed to be, or any of that stuff, or what we needed to do to roads. That totally their decision. They could come back with a number I thought was way too high, but I figured they knew what they were doing, and I just shut up.
That's a good point. That's an excellent point, of just know which when to. It's in everybody's interest, including your interest in this case, to just let them go ahead with what they knew best, and hopefully that's what they did when you had recommendations on what to do or
They
what
did.
not to do.
We got along with that all the way. And if we had more time, which I know we don't, I would tell you the story about how I made sure that a particular partnership was structured so that we would not argue with each other, because I was concerned about, I had 3 other partners in that deal, and I was concerned. One of them I knew I'd get along with famously, and one of them I thought maybe, and the other one I was sure we would end up killing each other if we didn't structure it just right.
Yeah, and I think you just said it in a nutshell. I think that's the heart of the reason people do go into partnerships or do not go into partnerships, because of what you just said of what happens if you don't get along when you feel